San Mateo County currently ranks as the #2 healthiest place in the entire state of California, but every area has its good and bad. So today, we're gonna rank all 11 San Mateo County cities from worst to best, with 5 different tiers ranked by factors like location, lifestyle, real estate, and more. And just keep in mind, everyone's best and worst will be totally different. This is just my opinion. I'm just sharing mine as a local, having lived here my whole life and helping nearly 600 families, couples, and individuals buy and sell homes here in San Mateo County. Okay, so let's start with tier 5. This one is not so much about being the worst of the worst or anything like that. We're still talking about a highly sought after county after all. However, I'd say these 3 cities just lack in some areas and others, and let me be clear, all of these areas are very expensive and sought after, and I've represented lots of folks buying in each of these areas that I'm gonna talk to you about, and they've all been very happy. Okay, so on the first tier, we have South San Francisco, Daly City, and San Bruno. For me, these 3 cities have less desirable weather, their downtowns and commercial areas are lacking compared to some of the other nearby cities that are a little bit more cute and have more tree-lined streets. I think a common factor between all of these towns and why they're so much more affordable is because of the weather. There's just more people who will pay a lot more to have more sunshine, and as you move more south, it just typically gets more sunny. Also, in general, I would say some of the towns a little bit more south typically have higher tree density as well, which adds to the more expensive pricing in those areas too. Okay, so for San Bruno, let's talk about the downtown at San Mateo Avenue, which I think is pretty cool, but it's not necessarily a spot you'd head to on a date night where you'd walk around, shop and browse, kind of like some other downtowns, but there's some good places to eat. In Daly City, there's not really a downtown either, but the shopping center at Westlake is super popular, and there's all the big box stores that you could possibly want, plus a movie theater. But because it's on the colder side, it's less of a destination than more of a place where you can go and get things done. Okay, as I mentioned, there's lots of people who love calling these areas home. I think South San Francisco is the most well-known of the 3, with its own famous city name etched into the hillside and earning the nickname Industrial City. South San Francisco has a little bit of everything: light industrial, lots of big businesses, and many residential neighborhoods that are a perfect fit for many families, couples, and individuals. It's important to mention that parts of South City happen to be shielded from the typical San Francisco fog since it lies in a valley. It's surrounded by mountains, so you can get some amazing views and landscapes of the whole bay. Also, just because it has a large light industrial base doesn't mean that we need to rule out nature from the equation. There's plenty of outdoor space like Oyster Point Park and Sign Hill. And let's not forget San Bruno Mountain, which has miles of hiking trails and also has its own state park, which is a popular spot for going for a walk or hike. But I think one of the best things about these 3 towns is that they're way more affordable than the rest of the county, and affordable being relative. Okay, so let me give you a quick idea on the numbers there. In South San Francisco, you get a range of pricing. Kind of smaller homes and condos are gonna start around $750,000, and homes are gonna top out in the mid to high $1 million range. And in San Bruno, we're talking around $1.3 to $1.5 million for a typical home. And in Daly City, a home is going to cost around $800K to $1.5 million, which is not even a third of the cost in the priciest cities that we'll get to in a few minutes. But keep in mind that in these cities, the median price gets you a home of about, let's say like 1,300 to 1,500 square feet, which is quite small. But hey, if you could spend 50 to 100% more and get a home in a more expensive area with the exact same square footage, that's gonna be a tough call, and you gotta think deeply about that and what you want. If you're looking for better weather, more of a charming downtown with cute stores and more tree-lined streets with varied architecture, these might not be at the top of your list. It's also worth mentioning that biotech is super strong in South San Francisco, with headquarters of Genentech and over 80 different biotech companies. So if you work in biotech and you want to be close to where people live in an attractively priced home, it's absolutely worth looking into South San Francisco. Okay, but overall, all of these cities do have some good appeal to them, but let's dive into the next 2 on my list, which will be Millbrae and Redwood City. So Redwood City is super well located on the peninsula, making it a pretty popular spot for those who work in Silicon Valley, or if you work as far north as San Mateo. It's a little bit far though, in my opinion, if you do work in San Francisco, so I'd probably consider living a little bit more north if you do kind of have that connection to Redwood City. Redwood City's weather has been ranked government best by Climate Test according to NASA, and having been to Redwood City hundreds of times, I can certainly say that I love it here too. If you're looking for a tech job, Redwood City is actually pretty often overlooked. It's home to some major tech companies like Oracle and Electronic Arts, and the downtown has had a massive influx of money over the last decade. I just love how thoughtful everything looks. There's some stellar restaurants, and I just get a good vibe from Redwood City. And I feel like they care a lot about their history too. It has the original Fox Theater, also home to the San Mateo County Historical Museum. So if you're a history buff or you like to nerd out on that kind of stuff like me, that's a cool spot to go hang and check out for a couple hours. Redwood City also has schools like North Star Elementary, ranking among the best in the state. And let's not forget that the city also has its own Stanford campus for Stanford Health. Okay, so now let's talk about Millbrae. Millbrae is known for its thriving downtown, tree-lined streets, and friendly community. Millbrae has a BART station and Caltrain station, which makes it super easy to commute up to San Francisco. Now, these two are definitely on their own, but if they're only in tier 4, then that means they've got their downsides too, right? So Millbrae gets a little bit more wind than more southern parts of the peninsula, and there's only one downtown on Broadway, but it's a little bit smaller than downtown Burlingame or San Mateo, but it's still very cute. When it comes to real estate prices, Millbrae is not inexpensive at all, and it's the top of a lot of people's lists, with a median price in Millbrae being higher than San Francisco's at about $1.9 million. Redwood City's median is a tad more affordable at $1.7 million. At these prices, you can get some pretty solid square footage of around like 1,600 to 1,700 or more square feet, so that's a plus in my opinion. Okay, so in terms of cost, it's not the most affordable, but it's also not the most expensive. And again, affordable is a relative word here because it's all so expensive. Okay, it's now time for us to dive into my next tier, so let's dive into both Redwood Shores and Foster City. Redwood Shores is on the east side of 101, just east of Belmont and Redwood City, and Foster City is just to its north, and both are about 15 minutes or so from Palo Alto, just to give you some context. Redwood Shores is pretty suburban, it's very family oriented, and it's full of highly ranked schools and parks. There's tons of greenery and it's master planned, so everywhere you go, you feel like there's tons of space and a lot of thought went into the design. So I just love going to Redwood Shores. I just did a Metric Century bike ride over the weekend in Redwood Shores, and it was just gorgeous. There's also a lot of walking trails throughout Redwood Shores, including the very popular Bay Trail, which kind of goes around the perimeter of the town, kind of like in Foster City. And there's also a lot of waterways, lagoons, and canals that are kind of spread throughout the whole town, which is pretty unique and similar to Foster City in a sense. So if you love being surrounded by nature and greenery, I think you'd probably really love it here. One thing to mention though, if you value being close to amenities, you're not going to check that box here because Redwood Shores just has a small shopping area, kind of where the Bay Club is, right off the freeway across from the Oracle campus, and that's about it. Not a biggie though to get to more, but you just have to drive 5 to 15 minutes to get whatever you need. Again, that's a first world issue, but not a big deal, but just something to keep in mind if you really value being close to things, Redwood Shores would not check the box. But you can certainly rely on online delivery services for everything. But life in Redwood Shores, because it's so quiet, it doesn't have a downtown, it can get a little bit more sleepy. So if you're looking for that, that's awesome. Foster City is similar to Redwood Shores in that it's also master planned. It's surrounded by water everywhere, kind of throughout the whole city, and it has a great vibe. It's super safe and family friendly with easy access to the recently redone $90 million Bay Trail renovation, which raised the height of the levee kind of around the whole town for protection against sea level rise. Foster City has a stellar community feel. It's really well known for its famous 4th of July fireworks show. It also has a couple shopping areas where you can pretty much get everything you need, but they're less of a destination than more of just a spot where you can go and get whatever you need. For weather, since Foster City is a little bit more exposed to the bay, the eastern part of the city in the afternoon will kind of get some good wind from the bay, and you can probably hear the airplanes a little bit and see them too, so not a good or bad thing, but just something to be aware of. In terms of home prices, we're looking at about $2.4 million for Redwood Shores and $2 million for Foster City. Okay, before we get into tiers 2 and 1, if you like this video and you want to hear the best of life in San Mateo County from a local, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Having more subscribers like you helps me make even better content. Okay, so now what made my tier 2? San Mateo and San Carlos. San Mateo is pretty much smack in the middle of the North Peninsula. It's a super popular town, and part of that is because it has 103,000 residents in over 27 neighborhoods, so there's pretty much something for everyone. Let me tell you a little bit about San Mateo's downtown. You can basically walk end to end in about 5 minutes, but it's packed with about 171 different restaurants and cafes, so there's a ton of options. Central Park is right next to downtown, and it even has its own Japanese tea garden, and in the winter, the baseball field is turned into an ice skating rink. San Mateo's downtown is often regarded as one of the Bay Area's best, and it's a great place to hang out, has amazing food, in part because it's heavy Japanese cuisine scene too. Another thing I love about San Mateo is how so many streets, particularly in the older neighborhoods like San Mateo Park and the Baywood Aragon neighborhood, are tree lined with a ton of different architecture types, and homes just kind of have that older classic feel with the arched doorways and hardwood floors. They're just beautiful. You'll also find other neighborhoods like San Mateo Village that has all one-level ranch style homes, or the Highlands neighborhood, which is up on the hill near 280, which has about 900 Eichler style homes, which were built in the 1960s with a modern style of architecture that some love and some are just not a fan of. In San Mateo, like pretty much every other town here, you get tons of diversity with everyone from single professionals, young couples, families with little kids, up to middle-aged folks with older kids, to seniors and the elderly. That's something that I just love about the peninsula, and it's so magical about living here because there's just something for everyone. But one of the best parts about living in San Mateo is that it's known to have some of the best weather too, kind of like Redwood City. Feels a little bit like a Mediterranean climate, mild without extreme heat or cold, and slightly warmer than some of the more northern areas. Okay, let's talk about the topography. San Mateo, like other towns, is kind of flat in the areas near 101 and El Camino, and as you kind of head west towards 280, you'll get a lot more hilly. This is similar to nearby towns like San Carlos, Redwood City, Burlingame, and Millbrae too. I think people who are drawn to San Mateo value the suburban feel of the town because it has a ton of urban amenities, including Hillsdale Shopping Center, which has so many places where you can spend your money shopping. Okay, now let's talk about San Carlos, which is one of my favorite towns on the whole peninsula and the top of so many of my buyers lists. It definitely has a more residential and laid back feel, and probably everyone would agree San Carlos has a legit small town authenticity that's almost unique on the peninsula, with the exception of another town that I'll share about in a minute. With about 30,000 people, it's a lot smaller than San Mateo, and the downtown area on and around Laurel Street is just fantastic. Even the parking's free. I don't know why I'm so excited, but I think that's pretty cool. So if you want more things to do, then San Mateo might be a little bit better, but if you like a smaller town feel, then absolutely San Carlos wins. San Carlos is very walkable if you live in the flatter areas, particularly like Howard Park and White Oaks, which are two of my top neighborhoods on the whole peninsula. Eucalyptus Drive is ground zero for trick-or-treating and looking at Christmas decorations because people go all out on eucalyptus. And Burton Park is in between both neighborhoods, right off of Britton, and is one of the best parks on the whole peninsula. If you live up in the hills of San Carlos, having a car is definitely a must, but you'll have to drive a few minutes to get somewhere, which isn't that big a deal. But if you value the walkability of San Carlos, you want to be in the flats. For real estate pricing in San Carlos, it's going to be a little bit higher, kind of around $2.7 million, but can kind of range from about 1.5 up to about 2.8, but really it kind of tops out around 4 million. Meanwhile, the median in San Mateo is closer to 1.8 million. However, you can find homes that go from about $1.1 million east of 101 in San Mateo all the way up to about 8 million in San Mateo Park. But that's just because there's 27 neighborhoods with a huge variety of price points and a little bit of something for everyone. And since we're talking about San Mateo Park, just to give you an idea in there, the range is going to be about $3 to $5 million, but can go up to about 9 million with 7 to 10,000 square foot lots. But like I said, that's pretty pricey. However, a $4 to $5 million home in San Carlos is also going to be pretty sweet too. So for San Mateo though, at the entry price point, Shoreview and Parkside will be the most affordable, kind of in the $1.1 to $1.7 million range. And San Carlos at its lowest price point for a home is going to be about $1.4 to $1.8 million, kind of around for a 2-bedroom house. Both cities have a mix of flat and hilly areas, with flatter areas generally selling for a lot more since there's more demand for the flatter and more walkable areas. So you're going to get lower price per square foot up in the hills, pretty much up and down the peninsula, than in the flats. San Mateo has more new development options though, especially in areas like Bay Meadows, which has a Whole Foods, several corporate campuses, awesome townhome style living, and some good restaurants and shops too. These two cities offer some of the best living in San Mateo County, but why are they not the best on my list? Okay, so let me tell you what I think are two of the best towns in San Mateo County. And again, these are just my opinions. Hillsborough and Burlingame are the winners, and it's definitely not by accident. I know it's debatable, and this is again just my opinion, but these two towns offer the best of the best in terms of living in the county. But if you've been there, you just know how hard it is to leave. These are end destinations for so many people. Starting with Hillsborough, it's 19 miles south of San Francisco, about 20 to 30 miles north of Silicon Valley, and living in Hillsborough is as comfortable as it gets if you're into that type of feel. Hillsborough though is a very affluent town, and because of that, it's probably the most lush town in the peninsula, right up there with Atherton. Hillsborough has few sidewalks, minimal street lighting, and some neighborhoods have windier streets. Homes in Hillsborough though are typically on at least a minimum of half an acre, which is massive. That's about 21,000 square feet. So if you're looking for a lot of space, you're gonna absolutely love it. Hillsborough is 100% residential, so it has no businesses or restaurants, but it's very close to downtown Burlingame. While Hillsborough doesn't have its own library system, it does contribute about a third of the budget to the Burlingame Public Library System and also San Mateo, and it shares a fire department with Burlingame, but has its own police department. Many homes in Hillsborough have killer views of the bay, but at the minimum, because there's so much open space, about 240 acres in fact, the open space between homes is just significant, and you're unlikely to hear your neighbors if that's something that you do like. The homes are larger and more exclusive compared to the rest of the county, with about 3,900 homes. The average house is a minimum of half an acre. Once you get to know the community, you'll realize it's pretty warm and welcoming. The big difference is that because homes are so spread out, you form most of your connections through schools and other things that you're a part of, as opposed to other towns where you can get to know your neighbors a lot better. So that's a little bit of a drawback at Hillsborough. Now, Burlingame is more or less the same. It's just off Highway 101 and also provides super easy access to going up to the city for work, or if you work down in the valley, that's a big selling point about Burlingame. And I love Burlingame and have lived here because the walkability is unbeatable. Everyone knows the town because of its super awesome downtown, Burlingame Avenue, which is arguably the best in the peninsula and even better than Palo Alto, I've heard some people say. But what you may not know is that Burlingame doesn't just have one downtown area, it actually has two. The second is Broadway. With tree-lined streets, parks, and way more, it's just a really fun town to explore. Burlingame also has a terrific school district, with Burlingame High School being among the most highly rated schools in the entire state. If you're moving in with your kids, it's definitely worth a look. The difference with Burlingame is that since homes aren't just spread out, you generally get to know your neighbors pretty well. So if you're in the backyard and you're playing catch with your kid and the ball or frisbee goes into your neighbor's yard, that's the kind of feel that people who move to Burlingame really value. Most of the neighborhoods in the flatter areas are also what I'd call like super trick-or-treatable. In Burlingame, the typical house you're gonna find is gonna be on a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot lot. What's also interesting, there's significant overlap on pricing between the two towns that many people aren't aware of, and that's kind of between the $3 million to $8 million range, more than I guess you could say is obvious. Many buyers who can afford homes in Hillsborough have chosen to buy in Burlingame because they really value the walkability, the community feel, getting to know your neighbors, and they're just overall happy with living in a beautiful home, but maybe not a massive home. But if you're looking for a lot more privacy and a bigger home, then you might not choose Burlingame, you might choose Hillsborough. Okay, but just to give you an idea, $3 million in Burlingame can buy you about a 1,700 square foot home for 3 bedrooms and a kind of flatter, walkable location, or you could get about a 2,000 square foot, maybe one level ranch style home up in the Mills Estates neighborhood, which is a little bit hillier. For $5 million in Burlingame, you can get close to a 3,000 square foot home on a 6,000 square foot lot, new construction in Easton Addition or Burlingame Park. In Hillsborough, you won't find new construction as often or really a ton in the $3 to $5 million price range. Living in Hillsborough will start you at around $5 to $6 million, which is a crazy number, of course, but that's kind of where the market is. If you want those killer views and a tricked out remodeled home, be ready to kind of shell out closer to like $8 to $9 million. You will absolutely not be disappointed. You do get a little bit more bang for your buck in Hillsborough than Burlingame from a price per square foot perspective, because the median home is going to be around 4,000 square feet, which makes it the second largest in the county, just behind Atherton. Interestingly, in 2018, the average price per square foot in Burlingame surpassed the average price per square foot in Hillsborough. So if you ranked all 11 cities here, I'm curious for you, what would have made your top 1, 2, or 3? Let me know in the comments. I read every single comment and it'll be fun to hear your thoughts. But if you made it this far, there's a good chance you're probably thinking about buying a new home or selling your current one perhaps sometime soon. And I'd love to be your real estate resource of choice. So to get started, just shoot me an email or contact me using the link in the description below. As the #1 agent in Burlingame and a top 10 realtor in the entire San Mateo County and a local, I love talking about San Mateo County all day long, so I'd be happy to help. Before you leave, if you like this video and are curious about which one of Burlingame and Hillsborough is best for you, then you need to watch this video up here next. I share my honest comparison between both top cities, and I discuss what it's like to live in both areas and the significant difference in homes. So if you want to know which one is the best fit for you, or if you're just curious what either one is like, I'll put that video up here for you to watch now. I'll see you on the next video.